Good morning. I'm speaking this morning with the director and protagonist of Twice Colonized. Congratulations on the film's premiere at Sundance. Um, and it's an honor to meet both of you, especially given the context of the film, which is very, very poignant and very necessary. Could you start maybe talking about that meeting, your first meeting, and the discussion about actually filming IU, your life from a very personal perspective.
Should I say it? Yeah. So we met 7 years ago by coincidence in Copenhagen. And at the time, I didn't know who IU was, but somehow we ended up having coffee together. And IU is a big fan of coffee, so that was a lucky strike that I invited her. And only then did I realize all the things that she's accomplished. And in that first meeting we had, I realized so many things about the history of my own country and also a lot of things about myself that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I really felt a responsibility to find a way to share that knowledge that IU had given me. But at the time, I was still in film school and I didn't know exactly like what to do with it. I was talking about it, but it wasn't until 2 years later that we started filming together.
Mm. Interesting.
When he approached me, I had already been in 3 other documentaries.
Exactly.
So I just thought, just another person who wants to film me. And I just said yes.
Right.
The aim was because New Zealand and Canada had already apologized for the harm that had been done with the Inuit and with indigenous peoples by residential schooling, forced assimilation, loss of language. And the Danish government and the Danes know very little about it. And the same thing happened to us, although we are not finding graves of children who have passed away. The policy was the same, loss of language, loss of culture. And so I thought that it was an important story to tell.
Right. And when did you realize that the focus would be you would be the focus, and it would be through your experience and your sort of growth as well as a person, because we do see a lot of growth happening. When did that take shape in the film? Was that over the course of filming?
I would say that it was from the very first shoot, because the first time that we filmed together, it's actually in the film where IU is meeting with her friend Rasmus in a cafe, talking about how just speaking Danish affects IU. So it was very personal from the beginning, and of course developed over the 7 years that we worked together. For me, at least, it was always very important that the personal is political. So I feel like it's another way to reach people with a story when they can relate to a person and they can mirror themselves in that person. So IU being very generous in sharing her life, that really opens up this opportunity for people to see and learn and feel like they're okay. It also gives hope to see another person that reflects something in you.
Right.
It was a very tough journey, because when I left almost half a century before meeting Asmus again, I had worked with him on other issues with sealing. I had vowed when I was 18 and I left, I would never, ever speak Danish ever again. I would never go to Denmark again. And to the point where I changed my Danish name to be an Inuit name.
Right.
So that was a tough journey. I realized I was more forgiving. I had forgiven myself, and that I could speak the language again without all the hurt.
Right. That was such a poignant moment watching that film, because it really is, like you said, it puts in perspective the impact of stolen language, right? Like your original native language being stolen and learning this new language and what that does to you as a person and your body as well. Because even the way you talk, the language sounds different and your body becomes something different.
Yeah.
You
The
know?
language itself, because I was still carrying that bad memory and discomfort, it shows when I change into speaking Danish, my whole demeanor changes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so interesting, and I think it's warranted because that is the experience of many people in Canada as well. And you know, I speak from as a newcomer having to learn English as well. So it really is this change in who you are and how you present yourself as well, I think.
And as a white Danish person, I do not have that experience at all. So that like getting that window into seeing how it actually is when we've had test screening, that's something that really hits people. And they're like, wow, I did not know that this is what it feels like, because white Danish people are never in that situation. We're not exposed to that uncomfortness, and it's not something that we have to deal with at all.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of layers in that we can touch upon with this film, right? So thank you for bringing that up. And I want to talk a little bit about being vulnerable, Aaju, because you are very vulnerable in this film. We learn about your journey from childhood to where you are now. But can you talk about being comfortable enough with the crew to allow for such intimate moments?
I don't think it was that easy for Lin, because he saw me being miserable and not wanting to be filmed and having the camera on me all the time. So he had to put up with a lot of misery from me. And when I'm miserable, you better run, because it's not a fun place to be. But already then I was used to not being 100% Inuit, not being 100% Canadian, not being 100% Greenlandic or Danish. So I was already flawed. And at that point, I didn't care anymore. Just see me in if you want to film me, you will have to take all this misery and hardship and discomfort. And if you're uncomfortable, that's on you. You take me as I am, and you film it and you show it. And if people have issues with that, I don't believe there's not one person, as an elder said to me, who has not gone through hardship. So it's like a mirror that we have to look at and be uncomfortable. I want people to be uncomfortable, because it's ourselves who are uncomfortable with our own skin. So I'm comfortable with
I think one of the things that really, in the beginning, you would say to me that it wasn't enough just filming your success on the stage, because that's not like, I think that there's a risk of creating unrealistic role models where you look at these amazing people on stage like Aaju, you are such an amazing speaker and you inspire so many people, but that you also at the same time dare to share yourself on stage a lot of times in classrooms and things. I really think that that makes people feel like, okay, I can do something, I can make a difference as well. So that was really important, not just to film the success, but all the behind the scenes stuff of living with the effects of colonization.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the impact of colonization on your family, like your brother and you know, the generations that have come after as well, right? Because we see the circle in terms of family here.
Yeah, the saddest thing that happened was moving to Canada and then moving somewhere else where I don't have the support, where I don't have the guidance, where I can't just call up my brother and say, come and help me move this couch, move my things. So I don't have that support. I'm all by myself and can't, when you have family, you can just call them up, drive me here or do this for me. So I didn't have that.
Very true. Very true. And I think that happens to a lot of also young people, Inuit and First Nations who leave home to go live in the city, and is that disconnect, right? It's not just the community, but it's also culture and support as well. You know, I know there were moments in the film that are difficult and very personal and sometimes maybe provoke anger and sadness, but there are also times of joy. And I love the scenes of you dancing. Aaju, the Tina Turner one, you know, I totally relate to having just something that brings you joy. Can you talk about what it, you know, what music means to you and how you use that to kind of get through life?
Emil Perona, who is also working
Yes.
on the film,
Mm-hmm.
made a documentary also about Sumi,
Mm-hmm.
that revolutionized Greenland and Greenlanders. And I believe that music gives you strength and the
Right.
power. And when I'm dancing to Tina Turner, for instance, I'm a big fan of Tina Turner.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It gives me joy. It just releases everything, and you can just be normal in the sense of yourself at that
Right.
moment. No worries. So the language also is very important to me. That's how I relearned Greenlandic. That's how I learned the Inuit language. That's how I learned different languages, listening to the music. It's important. This morning when I was doing my yoga, I was listening to the Four Seasons. So music is incredible. It's calming, it's relieving, it's amazing.
Absolutely. So I'm curious about, you know, this dynamic that you developed in filming, Lin, because you have to be very much in tune with Ayu's, you know, day to day. Can you talk about, you know, deciding how big was the crew, for example, and sort of, you know, how to navigate whether she's overseas versus at home?
Yes, well, mostly it was just me and Ayu alone. And I think that was really important in building up our relationship and having the space for us to talk about what to film and why to film and when. And so I think that for the first years, it was just us. And then on 3 shoots, we shot with cinematographers, 3 different cinematographers. David Bauer, who came to Iqaluit and shot some of the amazing shots of you and your granddaughters and place. And then we shot in Denmark with Glauco Bermudez, and then we shot in Greenland with Iris Ing. But it was really important to have a very small crew because I really wanted it to be something where we weren't depending on other people's schedules and everything. I wanted it to be something where we had the flexibility to go with what felt right to Ayu in the moment as far as possible. And that meant that we were changing plans all the time because, you know, when it's real life, you don't always know what's going to happen tomorrow or what feels right or what, like, you have to be able to go with that. So we try to as much as possible.
But also my son passed away in the early stages of the filming.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
And COVID happened.
Yes.
But having experienced all this, I told Lin yesterday, you can put on your bibliography, on your curriculum vitae, I survived 7 years with Ayu. I can do anything.
Got tough skin now.
I bet. But I mean, you know, it shows through the film though, because we do see there's a level of trust on your part, Ayu, over time for those moments to show on screen, like the vulnerable moments and allowing someone to sharing your joy as well. You know, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the sort of the time span because it is sort of 7 years and we kind of go in and out of different situations. And we do see you working, you know, with trying to start the Indigenous Forum with the European Union. Can you talk about what that experience was like from your perspective, Aaju? And I want to hear from Lin what that was like to observe.
It came from experiences where I had to go to Europe to advocate for Inuit right to stealing and Inuit language, Inuit culture. And how all of Europe was blindsided, not seeing the horrible effects it was having on Inuit and Inuit economy, Inuit culture. And I always felt so alone when I would go to Europe. You know, big parliaments, 26, 27 countries, everybody not listening, thinking that they're all that and that they're doing the best. You know, we're so tired as Indigenous peoples of having white people or colonizers telling us this is the best for you. So we're going to decide this for you. It's so outdated. And I think that the most important thing we can achieve with this film, one of them is to have establish an Indigenous forum at the EU where legislation affects us, and we need to have a voice, and we need to be visible, especially in the light of climate change, I believe.
Absolutely.
For me, I think I don't believe in just observing. I believe that when Aaju and I were together in making this film, and that there's a connection between us, that means that I don't just follow whatever happens. I also try to support whatever goals you have and do whatever I can to help push that agenda and help set up meetings or use my contacts to further that. So I was also talking with you about like what you wanted and how we could try to push that, and who could we set up meetings with. And then at the edit, of course, we had so much footage, like going in a million different directions. And it was really, it was difficult because we wanted to tell so many things. Like I was just saying yesterday, like Aaju, she's got a black belt in karate. She did a CD at one point with music, and she's a sealskin designer. Like you are so many things, and making a portrait of a person is never the same as the actual person. It's just a piece of that. And finding out how to put all of those pieces together and select which ones to put in the film. It was really something that the editor Mark Bookdale was so like, he has this I would say like heightened sense of empathy and sense of dynamic. Like you have to have the music, you have to have this energy to, like, I think what he did very cleverly was not to dive into all of the deep politics, because it's very complex areas. And it's very heavy meetings. So just like giving people a snippet of all of these things, it makes you reflect, and I hope that it will inspire people to go look some more into this and just find out, okay, wow, I was curious about that meeting. What was that about? I hope that's what's going to happen when people watch
I'm glad you mentioned your editor, because that was a question I always find with documentary filmmakers. There's so much, right? And the angles where the stories could take. And you mentioned the music as well. There's very beautiful music in the film. Can you talk a little bit about that? And was there a collaboration among the crew or production team deciding?
Yeah. So sound design is very important for me, and it's something that I think about from like almost the first shoot, and especially when the first shoot was about language. I knew that sound and music was something that had to be an incorporated part of the film. And then luckily, or not luckily, but the editor, he also is really someone who deals with music from the beginning and works in the edit with sound design, and these, you know, we have these very dynamic cuts with the sound. So that was kind of we began that. Sorry for English.
That's fine. No need to apologize. No need to apologize.
It began in the edit, but then when we came to the sound design process, no, what was it I wanted to say? Yes, we got this incredible singer, Selena. How do you pronounce it? Garlook. To do throat singing.
Yes.
And she's actually one of Ayu's students, so that was really interesting that she became such a, or her voice became such a significant part of the film.
She's my colleague.
Oh, she's your colleague. Yeah. Okay. She's incredible.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many things in the film that are just powerful, like music, visuals, the clips of just you standing on what looks like cliffs, and that kind of stay with you because we see it towards the end of the film. Seeing the film completed, Ayu, what has that meant to you? And, where do you see the journey continuing from here?
I felt like running away and disappear. But it's a high price to pay when you're always advocating. You're always in the front and people will try to cut you down and how come you get to do this and how come you get to do that? And telling my own story is very scary. It's looking at yourself and the focus being on you is very scary for me. But I've been through a lot, so I think if I stay true to myself and focus, then it's an important story to tell because it talks about so many different aspects of influences that have influenced our lives. And I'm hoping that it will create a lot of dialogue in different areas. So in that case, that's okay. I can deal with that.
Well, thank you. Yes. I mean, it's created a lot of dialogue for me internally. So I am grateful to spend a bit of time with you today to sort of get some of that context too. And I think a lot of us who reside here in Canada, who are sharing the space and benefiting from the caretaking of our First Nations brothers and sisters is really important. So, what's next for the film? You're here at Sundance. I'm very excited to hear what's happening there. But, what's that journey for you, Lin, in terms of being a director and taking this film forward?
It's very exciting and it's like a lot of fun and very overwhelming at the same time to be here. The last time that we were physically together was on the last shoot of the film, 6 months ago.
Right.
So being here and now it's done and people come up to you and tell you how much the film means to you. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But knowing Lin, I knew it was gonna happen. So I was like, okay, I'll just go with it. And she is amazing. First time entering and being accepted. I think Lin made a great, amazing job following me and then telling the story. And Lin when you're working with someone who's not from your culture or who hasn't gone through the same experience, Lin captured it really well.
Right.
Of not being from the Inuit or colonized heritage. So, and people were questioning, why are you working with this Danish white woman? And my response to that was, everything always has been decided for me. It was always my colonizer or my teachers or somebody else deciding what I should choose and what I should do. And this was my choice. That's my rebuttal to that statement. It was my choice. And I think, and I believe I made a great choice.
It shows. Thank you for saying that. I think it shows in the final film, which is such a beautiful story with so many, many emotional moments. I teared up a couple of times. So I think when people come to you and say how grateful they are, I think they mean it because it really is impactful and very powerful. Thank you, both of you. I'm just mindful of time, but I could speak for hours, but thank you for your time this morning. And Aaju, a privilege to meet you, even if it's through computers. And all the best for the rest of your journey with this film. And I'll be sure to follow what's happening in terms of your work, Aaju, as well.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to just quickly mention that we put up a website where we're
yes.
that is called twicecolonized.com, where we haven't finished it yet. We're still working. But we want to set it up so that you can support and follow Aaju's work moving forward.
Excellent.
A lot of the work that Aaju is doing, she's doing voluntarily and by herself. So yeah, we're just trying to build some support around that if people are interested.
The next film by Lin is going to be titled Twice Decolonized.
Yes, it's going to be a boring film, but it's going to be so happy.
Well, we're going to look forward to that time and that film for sure. And I'll be sure to mention this website so that people can follow along.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.